Hello, I'm Andy Morris with Realty Trust Services. I wanted to talk today a little bit about multifamily properties and specifically how to do utilities, how landlords should do utilities in multifamily properties. So, utilities in Cleveland, Ohio are not complicated enough already with single-family homes. The whole process is made even more complicated when you have a multifamily property. So, if the utilities are split, in other words, they're metered separately for each unit, then you're actually not that much different for those particularly split utilities than how you would handle them on a single-family property. And I did a video on utilities on single-family properties in Cleveland, Ohio, too. However, you definitely run into a whole new, very different situations when you're dealing with utilities that are not split. And so a lot of the duplexes, quadplexes, triplexes in the Cleveland area, and even larger multifamily buildings, for some reason they decided to save money and make the landlord pay all the utilities because they weren't able to sub-meter or they didn't do separate meters when they were building these properties. Well, that was very common. And I suppose that way back when a lot of these properties were built, 50 to 100 years ago, utilities were a lot cheaper. They're not the huge expenses, especially the last couple of years, utilities have become. So landlords are looking to increase profit by shifting the utilities to the tenant. So as far as options, your only options is when when the meters are not split or your utilities are not split or separately metered, are one, the owner has to pay the utilities. That's the first option. And it is the simplest option probably and the cheapest as far as upfront costs. However, with the expensive utilities recently, it's not always, the owners are looking for ways to shift this to the tenant. One option that people are asking about, and we've experimented a little bit with, is something called RUBS, also known as Residential Utility Billing System. RUBS is essentially, I'm sorry, it's not residential, it's ratio utility billing system. So basically what it is, it's a ratio that you create and you divide the bill up. That's essentially what it is. And normally it's divided, so you have a water bill, say, and there's 3 tenants, and you create kind of this arbitrary formula. Sometimes it's all based on the number of occupants. Other times it's weighted with the square footage of the different units, and then you put that into the ratio. And sometimes owners, a lot of times, will factor in a little bit for maybe common area, and they'll pay a portion of the bill as well and add that into it. So the benefit of RUBS is that it's easy and quick to set up. It can be complicated, but because you're adding in all these figures. A lot of property management software does actually compute the RUBS formula itself, but it's usually better to just simply use a simpler formula if you're going to split it up, because the tenants are definitely going to want to understand how they're getting a specific bill, and you want to be able to explain it to them. So you'll have to show them the original bill, and it can end up creating a lot of issues, because then tenants, this is the downside of RUBS. It's easy, this is the upside. The downside is that the tenants oftentimes distrust it because it's not based on true usage. So they're thinking, they get an extra big bill, and they're thinking, my gosh, I know I didn't use extra water this month. I think it's a leak, and I shouldn't have to pay for this. Or I think that the tenant upstairs had a boyfriend, that was staying overnight and using all this water, takes long showers, or whatever, the girlfriend takes long showers, that's not on the lease and it wasn't calculated properly, or one tenant has special water needs. It just ends up being sometimes unfair. So you can be done, but in the times we've done it, and we've done it a few times, we've definitely had a lot of pushback from tenants. you're fighting against two things. Number one, a lot of tenants are used to not paying some of those utilities when they go to a multifamily property. And then you have the whole unfairness factor, that they don't feel like it's fair. So I don't recommend RUBS. It's something that we can do as a property management company, or you can do, but you definitely have to be careful with that. And then the third option is there's kind of third option A and B, but essentially to meter or sub-meter. So to meter it actually involves going to the utility company and asking them to put more meters in. Depending on the utility company, depending on the situation, that may or may not be possible. If it is possible, it's going to be probably very expensive and prohibitively expensive. You might as well just continue doing what you're doing. You may have to get city permits, special permits and things of that nature, and variances and stuff like that. And sometimes it's just not possible. It's not allowed with this type of property to go ahead and put the meter in. You have to have outside third parties helping out with that. So the other option that's a lot less expensive in terms of getting actual readings is the sub-metering process. And so you can find sub-meters that essentially that you put them after the main meter for the utility supply. And you can do this for electric, water, and gas, but normally you're just doing it for water because that's the big issue normally that's for meters not being split. You can get a water meter for $90 to $100. So if you have a triplex, you'd be out about $300 for the cost of those meters. Normally you're going to need to get a licensed plumber to go ahead and install those, and it's usually more than just dropping in, cutting out a piece of pipe and dropping a meter in. Normally there's some rerouting that has to be made because you don't know exactly where the split was. There could be a main water line that splits one way to go one place. You got to bring it all down. You might have to bring the line down closer to where the main water meter is to make it split, and you have to split both the hot water and the cold and all that. So there's some extra plumbing there, but oftentimes the actual metering can be pretty inexpensive. Also, there's options where you can get online readings. So you can get for a small amount extra, you can get a module that reads these meters and makes it available to a Wi-Fi system or through a router. Then it's available online and you can read it. Because that's the other option is problem with sub-metering is that you have to actually read it and split the bill. So you'll get a main bill and you use basically the ratio of the different usages in the sub-meters to calculate what the tenant's bill should be. That's the proper way to do it, not just go based on the readings, because you don't really know if your readings match up with the are going to match up with the utility company's readings. So you basically measure the different meters and calculate a ratio. One thing we've experimented with is or starting to experiment with is with the sub-meter. You could write into the lease that the tenant has to, that when the water bill comes in, we're going to split this equally between the tenants, and then whichever tenant wants to will take a picture of all 3 or 2 or whatever meters, send it to the management company, and then we'll issue credits based on the ratio. And that's a pretty simple calculation. We can do it in a couple minutes, put it onto their bill, and then everything's fair and equal. And you also know if there's any crazy water usage, or it allows you to ferret out issues of leaks and water usage issues in general. But with the internet reading system, you can actually get, there's some free Wi-Fi. We're just getting ready to experiment with it. So you can actually get free cellular internet, not free Wi-Fi, which will connect into these sub-meters. And you just have to pay for the unit, and if you go over like 500, a certain amount in a month, you have to pay for it. But as long as it's under a certain amount, and the utilities don't, this type of billing meter doesn't use that much data, you can actually get that connection for essentially free, other than paying for the equipment. So that's something that we're getting ready to experiment with. So I hope that gives you some information on how utility billing works. With our clients, we can give estimates and things of that nature in order to split utilities and work with you to make your property very profitable.
Attention landlords, are you interested in professional help, leasing, lease optioning, full-service management, or acquiring more investment property? If so, please call 440-220-7300 or email us at sales@propertymanagementoh.com. To get tips, tricks, and relevant Cleveland, Ohio investment and landlord information, please visit propertymanagementoh.com/news and subscribe to our newsletter.